Welcome back to Luminary Leaders Live. I'm your host, Shelly Harrison, and I'm here with Chuck Knabusch. And I want to welcome everyone that's out there, our viewers, our followers, subscribers. And before we get started, we just want to say, with the fires that are in LA and Pasadena, the surrounding areas, we just, our hearts go out to you. And there's just so much devastation, and we really want to just say that our hearts are with you. So thank you so much to our first responders, firefighters, everybody that's working hard to, really take care of the damage that's been done. So again, thank you. Thank you to you all. So Chuck, I know we're here for an interview with you. I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Shelly. Thank you.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I know, we've had the pleasure of working with you. This is a premium episode. Chuck, you're one of our premier clients, VIP clients. And I really want people to understand the work that you do and how, what you've done since you left the corporate arena not long ago and started 1310 Business Solutions. I'd like to start with just tell us a little bit about yourself. And I know you're coming to us not from California, but somewhere else. So let's get started with that.
Yeah, Shelly, I currently reside just outside of Beaumont, Texas, about an hour and a half northeast of Houston, kind of what they call Southeast Texas. We moved here after I retired. I retired in 2018 from a 28-year career with Lazy Boy Incorporated. 2019, my wife was like, either get a job or get a hobby. So I decided a job paid a little bit better than a hobby.
Yeah.
And it was kind of perfect timing because my former employer reached out and said, hey, would you come back, do a consulting gig?
Oh, so that's awesome. Yeah.
I did that until COVID hit. They said, hey, we've got to let you go. We're furloughing all the employees, all the consultants, all the coaches. I said, absolutely. Certainly understand that. About 3 months later, they called back and said, would you come back for another engagement? This time we need to go ahead and open manufacturing facilities. Oh. As I spent my whole career in operations, all the different facets. I'd never had a chance to open a manufacturing facility. I'd close them, I'd move them, I'd run them, but I'd never had a chance to go ahead and open one from scratch. So what a great opportunity. I said, absolutely. And for about 15 months, I worked with Lazy Boy to open up 2 manufacturing facilities south of the border in order to handle the large backlog of orders from COVID.
Gosh. Oh, I could just imagine. I know. And Lazy Boy is such a phenomenal brand. That was one of my first couches was a Lazy Boy. And I have furniture from Lazy Boy still. Yeah. And I know, this is kind of unique because, here you were working for a corporation for many years doing, the role that you had with Lazy Boy, and you've really turned this into a machine. I mean, 1310 Business Solutions. I know, this business, you've got so many wonderful things that you've already done, projects and a book, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but this is your book. Let me make sure. Hope is not a business strategy, how to take control of your business so it won't take control of you. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. I think our viewers would want to know, how did you get the name 1310 Business Solutions is understandable, but 1310?
Well, when everybody's looking to go ahead and name their business, you always want something kind of catchy, something flashy. Well, I looked out at performance. I looked at process. I looked at, a lot of kind of what I would consider the traditional names, and they were taken. But I had seen someplace else where somebody had done a number that was partly in numerical context and partly in alpha context. Yeah. And I said, I really like that. So I took my address, and that's where 1310 came from.
I think that's so unique. And you turned it into, 13 and then the word 10, which it is very unique, and it's something that is special to you. And that's unique. I think it's fantastic. And the background that you have, I want to get into your background, Chuck, because, you had been in operations for so many years. and turning this into a business, how do you work with business clients? When you think of it as, operations, and is it just a piece of their operation, or is it their entire operation that you work with business owners?
It depends on the issues that they're having. I mean,
Yeah.
I look at operations as anything that's a repeatable business. So, I
Mhm.
mean, you go ahead and say payroll is an operation. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not in your traditional operations area. It's not manufacturing. It's not It's not production. It's not logistics. It's not purchasing. It's not that kind of thing. But to me, I look at it from a process standpoint. Any repeatable process is an operation that I can work on. So
Yeah.
it depends on what the owner, what the business leader is having trouble with. I don't pretend to be a sales guru or a marketing guru. I probably won't come up with your next marketing campaign. Um, but realistically, I can go ahead and help you lay out a plan on how to go ahead and launch a marketing campaign. Um,
Mhm.
in my book, I talk about uh, you know, a lot of times small business, and for us, I kind of took it from the aspect of my wife and I rather than kind of corporate lazy boy. And I took
Mhm.
it from the aspect that we all use contractors. Well, some of them do phenomenal, and we sing their praises. Some of them don't do so well, but the funny thing is, a tiny little tweak can go ahead and make us sing their praises, and they
Mhm.
don't have to go ahead and spend $100,000 or throw a whole department of personnel at it to fix the problem.
Yeah.
So I take a very pragmatic approach. I like to
Mhm.
look at planning, leadership, and execution. It's kind of the three major things I look at in my practice. And
Yeah.
generally, if we work on those three, we can go ahead and fix most problems.
And that is fascinating, because I know operations is one of the things that, I mean, I love operations when it comes to marketing, and the sales that you mentioned earlier. I can do pretty good with that too, and it's because of my background and the training that I had when I worked for a bank, and I worked for a bank for many years. But there are a lot of the business owners that don't have that experience as far as sales and the marketing. So in the other hand, they don't have the operations experience. So if they do have heavy on sales and marketing experience, but they don't have the operations, that's where you can come in and set up some programs and systems, and some strategy behind that, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, most business owners, they started out on their own. They've gone ahead. They understood a product or a service that their market needed, that their customers wanted.
Yeah.
So, and they fulfilled that niche. But now that they're starting to grow, they're adding employees, or they're trying to go ahead and still handle it themselves, and they're doing everything. Until you start to create processes, until you start to systematize it, that you're starting to have that chaos. You can't do everything. You can't fix it, even if you're a solopreneur and you have
Yeah.
to do everything. Sometimes if you can go ahead and put it into systems, if you can put it into a process where you can automate bits and pieces of it, it all of a sudden takes a lot off your shoulders. Or when you're starting to hire, how do you go ahead and document what you want that new hire to go ahead and do? You need
Right.
to have a process. And to me, a process doesn't exist until it's been documented, because you've got to be able to tell somebody else. I don't know, Shelly, if you remember when you were a kid, but certainly my generation, we used to play that game called telephone, where we'd all sit in a circle
Oh,
and we
yeah.
whisper in the first person's ear something from a piece of paper or some message. And by the
Yeah.
time we went all the way around, it was unrecognizable. Well, that's the same thing that happens with business owners when they say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I
It's
want
those
you to go ahead and
silos.
do this." Well, they tell their first employee, who tells the second, who tells the third, who
Mhm.
tells the fourth. And by the time it gets around, at some point in time, the process doesn't look anything like what the business owner expected and initiated. So we really need to go ahead and document that in a way that's easy to pass along.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned, even entrepreneurs, even if they have just a few employees, they need to have, training manuals, and they need to have operational procedures, in a booklet or something. And some companies, they'll create that, but then they'll put it on a shelf and just leave it there. And I'm sure you've seen companies that have done that. But when running a business, I mean, you have to have all those things like a Swiss watch. Everything needs to be running smooth. So when you come into a business, let's say they're not doing so well in the operations area. What is the first thing that you do to tackle that project?
Well, I mean, it depends if it's an on-site type of client or it's a remote. But
Hmm.
either way, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to try and get into understanding what's going on. Because a
Yeah,
lot of times when the client comes to me, they're coming to me with a symptom. They don't
yeah,
necessarily
true.
understand the underlying root cause. Um, so, we have a conversation. We try and get as close to that root cause as possible
Hmm.
through conversation. It might be with the owner, it might be with some of the people who work there. We can take a number of different approaches. But after we go ahead and do that, we kind of understand what that root cause is. Then
Hmm.
we go ahead and start applying, whether it's planning, it's leadership, or it's execution, to go ahead and make the improvement. We have a number of templates to make documentation easier. And again, documentation doesn't have to go ahead and be that written tome that we put on the shelf that's 4 million pages long that nobody wants to go ahead and crack open. I mean, it
No.
could be a series of very short videos because
Yeah,
we
that's
all have
right.
a camera on our phone. And if we can go ahead and sit down and capture a quick video explaining these are the steps, and then going ahead and putting that maybe with a piece of paper that shows what that person's looking at, that might be a great way. And then you can put those
No,
together someplace where they're accessible. So there's a
exactly.
lot of interesting and very easy ways to go ahead and make improvements. I like
Yeah.
to go ahead and talk about. I had a home in Mississippi at one point in time, and I think we were the second owners. But the neat thing was when the contractor built the home,
Hmm.
they went ahead and took and put paint chips on a piece of paper and listed what room each one of those paint chips went to. The
Oh,
first owner passed it on to me, being the second owner.
huh.
I mean, what a great thing. Didn't cost that contractor much of anything because paint
Yeah,
chips are generally free. Took him a few minutes to go ahead and put it down. But
yeah,
realistically, now I knew the color of every room if I needed to touch it up. I mean, I could always change it.
yeah,
What the color was going to be. I didn't have to scrape it off. I didn't have to take it down and try and do a color match. I know
yeah,
they've got great systems and pieces of equipment that do that, but sometimes it's still a little bit off. So I
yeah.
had the paint chips. So I kind of knew probably where the paint came because Lowe's doesn't carry the same paint as Home Depot or
Right.
Sherwin-Williams or whatever. So I knew where to go. I knew what color to get to go ahead and do touch up, and it cost the contractor nothing. And realistically, as a second owner many years later, I was still talking very favorably about that contractor.
Oh, I mean, that is a genius idea when you think about it, because a lot of us, when we get into a new home, we have to kind of guess or just repaint the whole room and spend more money, even though, it would have been fine just doing some touch ups.
Right.
Yeah, that's a prime example. When you were working at Lazy Boy, like you had mentioned, you just did some amazing things, with the expansion and things that they needed to do to grow. And I would imagine that with the businesses that you can work with, where if let's say they're doing really well and they're a good solid company that has great revenue and they're going to be expanding with more locations, that's something that you can help with as well. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. I mean, opening two more plants for Lazy Boy during COVID was not a cakewalk. I mean,
No.
anytime I wanted to go ahead and come home, I had to take a COVID test. The poor nurses at the
Oh,
facilities were like, "Oh my goodness, we've given you so many COVID tests, we kind of hate it." I said, "I understand, but I really like to go home and see my spouse." Um,
yeah.
so, I mean, I wanted to go home and see my wife. So, the only way I could do that was to go ahead and take the COVID test. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
learned to go ahead and take lots and lots of COVID tests. But it was really interesting working with, a slightly different culture down
Hmm.
in Mexico. I mean, they were always looking for perfection before they rolled it out. And it's like, we don't need to be perfect. Even
Hmm.
if we're just 80% of the way there, let's roll it out. We can always tweak it. We can always make improvements because the idea is, nothing's going to be perfect. Either time or business conditions or something's going to change that we're going to have to update it anyway. So why
Yeah.
not put something out now and get the benefit of whatever efficiency, whatever improvement. And then if we have to go ahead and improve it again, it's not a big deal. We're now
Right.
starting from a documented place of improvement rather than starting from chaos.
Yeah. No, and that great points, great points. And which leads me to your book, Hope is not a business strategy. Let's talk about this. And I'd really love for our viewers and listeners to know what prompted you to create this book and make it available for business owners.
Well, I kind of finished my second stint with Lazy Boy. Loved working for them, but I wanted to go ahead and touch base and work for some other businesses. They didn't have to be the size of Lazy Boy. We're not talking about $1 billion. But I mean, even small business, medium-sized business, they don't always have the money to hire a consultant. They don't always have the money to hire a coach. Whether they should or shouldn't, that's a whole different issue. But realistically, there's some things and lessons that I learned that were very, very pragmatic that can be simplified down where it doesn't cost $100,000. It doesn't take a team of 10 to go ahead and make it work. And that paint chip idea was a great one for differentiating. We had an HVAC service tech who came in one time, and we had never met him before. We were in a new area. We said, hey, we need our HVAC checked. He said, absolutely. He came to the door. Are you Mr. Knabusch? I said, absolutely. He said, hang on a second. I said, come on in. He said, hang on a second. And he put on little booties. And my wife immediately fell in love with him. He hadn't fixed the thing. He hadn't done anything, but he did not track outside dirt. House. So she immediately fell in love with him and sang his praises and still does, 5 years later. So realistically, yes, there was a cost to those booties, but I'm sure it was buried in the cost of the service call.
Of course.
For very little cost, he delighted a customer. And anytime anyone says, hey, who do you go to for HVAC? My wife or I will go ahead and tell them this person because they walked into our house without tracking in dirt and mud.
Oh, yeah. Now a lot of carpet cleaning businesses do that too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of businesses where they have to go in the home. That's a great story though. And, as far as this book, I mean, it's available on Amazon and I highly recommend that business owners take a look at this because this is a book that it's a very easy, quick read. And I know that they're going to learn a lot. It's something that will, really put them on track with business. And especially starting a new year, 2025, we've got a lot of things going on. We have, a new presidency, with someone new coming into the White House, and we've got, these fires. And I mean, with all this stuff happening, Chuck, what are you seeing with businesses right now? I mean, as far as the kind of the temperature of what's happening?
Kind of all over the map, Shelley. I mean, some are kind of hunkering down, waiting and seeing what's going to happen with the new presidency. I understand. The president-elect has come out, kind of talked about a lot of his policies, but we all kind of say, well, is that real or is that political talk? So you don't want to go ahead and place your bet just yet. So, a lot of businesses are kind of saying, well, I don't know what to expect fully. I know what he said, but again, that doesn't mean he's going to follow through. So I want to go ahead and understand. So a lot of times you're conservative over those first couple of months of transition, and then you'll go ahead and open up. I think the numbers just came out today for December's inflation, and it was up again. So again, that's hammering not just businesses, but the consumers who buy their products and services. So you're right. You need to go ahead and be cautious, but you need to have a plan. You need to really think through what it is you want to do. And that's kind of part of what my book talks about. And my book is not one of those you have to read from cover to cover. It is set up in ways where there's tips, I hate to say tricks, but there's tips, there's insights. There are chapters that you can go ahead and say, hey, I'm having this problem. Go find the problem in the book, open that, read a page, read 2, 3, whatever it is, and go ahead and get ideas on how to go ahead and solve that problem without having to go ahead and read a book cover to cover.
Yeah. Well, and I think a good old business plan, they should already be done by now, but I'm sure a lot of people are, maybe waiting to create a business plan. And that's something that, I know that you can help businesses with too. And what I really want to cover, and I know we just have a couple of minutes left for the broadcast. You are a professional speaker. You get up on stage, you work with, all different types of businesses. So you are ideal for different types of conferences where there's entrepreneurs, CEOs and executives, companies that have, leadership, where it's a big leadership team, multiple locations. Let's talk about your speaking, Chuck, because I know, we're working hard to get you booked with Luminary Leaders. And it's, it's much nicer when we can give you visibility and get you out here and have people see and hear what what you're talking about. So if you really had to pinpoint what you love most about speaking, can you share that with us right now and have our viewers and our listeners hear it from you directly?
Well, I think it's about connecting with the audience. I understand I'm not going to go down and sit in the audience and we're not going to sit and have a small conversation, but I still want to go ahead and give them value. So in order to do that, you still have to make some sort of connection with the audience and find out what it is they're looking for. Hopefully whoever set up the speaking engagement will go ahead and give some insight so you can have that conversation with the audience. So you can let them know. I mean, it's not just, okay, I'm going to talk about these 3 points and I'm going to go ahead and do it ad nauseum to every speaking engagement I go to. No, it's about customizing it, tweaking it, making it the audience that I have.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to, to get you out there, get you on stages. And the last thing that I want to mention is, 2 things. I want to make sure that people know that if they would love to book you for speaking for their next meeting, business meeting, a conference, wherever they need a speaker that can bring in the operations piece and talking about systems and, just expansion, whatever that happens to be, reach out to us, Luminary Leaders. You can reach out to Chuck directly. And Chuck, I know that we have your website there scrolling at the bottom, so people can definitely go to Chuck's website. And we're excited because you're going to have your own show.
Absolutely, Shelley. We want to go ahead and I think we're starting it up sometime mid next month. We're going to go ahead and talk all about operations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What makes an operation successful and how do we take an operation that may be in chaos and take it to success?
Yeah. It's going to be exciting. And I know, you're going to be able to bring on guests. You're going to be able to talk about specific examples, maybe even some case studies. I mean, it's going to be a very creative show. So we definitely want you to tune in. So we'll put some information out there on social media when the show is going to be launching. Chuck, I want to thank you so much for being on Luminary Leaders Live. You are the first show of the year. How about that?
Excellent.
Yeah, we've been doing this show for, oh my gosh, already 4 years. So I'm excited. And, you're our first guest, and what a great show, because you've given us so much insight on operations. And I want to make sure people know to go out and get your phenomenal book as a resource. And you can get that on Amazon. And Chuck, as far as, any last comment that you'd like to make before we end the broadcast?
Look forward to hearing from you and maybe seeing you, from on my podcast.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you everyone for viewing, tuning in, and this will be available on Spotify, iTunes, all of the podcast apps. So you can listen to it at the gym, you can listen to it in the car, wherever you get your favorite podcast. So thanks again for joining us. Chuck, thank you again, and good luck to you on all of your adventures. And we will catch everybody next time.
Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you.